Welcome to Outside the Room, exclusively brought to you by Massage Heights. I'm CG Funk, your host. We have a terrific guest for you today and an old friend of mine, Mia Kyricos. Mia is a global thought leader in the business of wellness, well-being, and she has 25 years experience in wellness-driven leadership and advisory roles. As president and founder of Kyricos and Associates, Mia enables executive leadership teams to activate ecosystems of well-being and thrive in the global wellness economy. Mia's career experience includes Senior Vice President of Wellbeing for Hyatt International. She was Chief Brand Officer for Spa Finder Wellness. She was also Director of Global Spa Brands for Starwood Hotel and Resorts. Mia was recently named the Global Leading Woman in Wellness and also Cornell University's Alumni of the Year. And this woman has truly helped to define the global wellness economy and transform what it means to be well at both work and in life. So let's get going. Mia, welcome to Outside the Room. It is so wonderful to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I am so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, and we go back a few years, you know. I think I probably met you at least 10 years ago. I
actually think it was it might have been like 15 years ago. It's been a while.
And was it in Bali that we met?
It was in Bali.
Yeah,
yes.
That was my first Global Wellness Summit that I attended. And I remember there was a handful of people that were really kind to me since I didn't know anyone. So you were one of those. So I'm so happy you're on our show today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and I will never forget you on stage in Bali. And I thought you were this fierce female leader that I wanted to get to know. So I'm so glad to call you friend now.
Thank you. Hey, listen, happy to have you here again. Let's jump right into this interview. Now I quite honestly, I think that we exchanged emails back in 2007 or 8 when you were working in Arizona. So that's been quite a long time ago.
Yes.
And so you've had really quite a career in wellness. Give us some highlights on that.
Sure. I think probably one of the best, I've actually, I used to be a spa director. That's actually where I got my start in the space. I ran a large day spa in Manhattan, Exhale, actually, their first flagship property, if you know of Exhale Mind Body Spas. And so learned the ins and outs of operations before I moved over to the hotel side of the equation. And I was at Starwood for about 8 years before they were acquired by Marriott, and really learned a lot about what it meant to look at spa much more seriously than an amenity for a hotel, as a real profit center that could enhance an overall experience. Spent some time, after about 8 years at Starwood, spent some time in Arizona where you and I exchanged some emails, where I was working for a human performance company called Exos, and they actually train the world's best athletes, NBA, PGA, NFL. And they asked me to repackage what they did for those top 1%ers and go and lead workplace wellness deployments on the campuses of company like Google and Intel, and really helping to make people feel better and get healthier in a workplace, because we're also stuck to our computers. Spent some time as Chief Brand Officer of Spa Finder Wellness, which I suspect your massage therapists and estheticians have heard a lot about, and got to really think about what wellness and spa really meant around the globe, because it meant different things to different people depending on where you were. And then probably most recently was the SVP and global head of wellbeing for Hyatt. And so now it wasn't just thinking about what wellness or spa or fitness or well-being should mean at hotels or in between hotel stays for consumers, but also for 130,000 colleagues worldwide. We had to walk the walk and talk the talk, and sing off the same sheet of music, which was a really great challenge and sort of unique for, I think, not just hospitality, but big business at large.
I think that's interesting, not to go down a rabbit hole, but here I go anyways. It's like, so, just going back, your career has been diverse, but it's always, gravitated towards spa and wellness. But that last part was really your role for those couple years. You were building a program for their employees is really what you were doing. And so I think just to point that out that, this huge internationally known hotel chain, high-end hotel chain in many cases, was investing in what they could do better to support their employees' well-being. And so you were a big part of that. And I know that you've always had a place in your heart for the folks that actually do the work, and
absolutely. And especially in hospitality where, your staff is no exception, where you're providing service all the time, but in the hotel industry, they live behind, in some ways, an excuse of being open 24/7. So people don't have time to take a break. We're never closed or whatever. And so that was a real challenge, was sort of resetting what it meant to be well for everyone from a housekeeper to a general manager to a bellhop to a spa director, around the world before they would be expected to turn around and help make consumers healthy and well. We have to start with us first. So it was a big passion point of mine. And I feel really grateful that I had the chance to do that.
And I like what you just said about the different positions and, and of course the spa massage therapist and estheticians and the folks that work in spa and the difference between what somebody like in Japan would consider wellness and what somebody in the United States or in Austria would consider wellness.
Exactly.
And so taking that to account. And if you look at an organization like Massage Heights, we have massage therapists and estheticians from all kind of walks of life, and they have all different interests, and they have, their lives look totally, they're individual and unique. And so, really looking at in a bigger scale for massage therapists and estheticians just in the country, and what they need can vary. And so that's really a great thing to keep in mind, as we develop programs like this.
Absolutely.
Now, you often use a term, and I think this is a really interesting little snippet, ecosystems of well-being. Ecosystems of well-being. Hey, can you just, can you pare that down for me so it's understandable for me what you mean by that?
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to make this so simple, but it's kind of, it's a nice segue from what you were just talking about with spa therapists and estheticians and just colleagues in general. But really what I've learned is that no matter what the organization, nonprofit, for-profit, Massage Heights, Whole Foods, whomever it is, people need to model and celebrate the fact that they care for themselves and share that with their teammates and others. So I think an ecosystem of well-being really has 4 parts. The first one is leaders. Leaders need to model their health and well-being, whether it's working out or eating well, but it could be making it home in time for dinner, celebrating their holidays, whatever it is. And if they demonstrate that, then employees, colleagues will feel like they have the permission to prioritize their own health and wellness. And if they are able to do that, they're happier, they're more productive in the workplace, they're better at delivering the services that are expected of them. Consumers are going to feel that. It'll feel a lot like love because they're going to see that the colleagues are happy and healthy. The leaders are, the consumers are going to feel like, wow, they not only care for us, but they care for their employees. That's going to make them want to buy more, purchase more services. That's going to overall make the community healthier and happier. It's going to be easier at that point for the company to hire people from the community. The community is going to be proud that you're in the backyard. And that beautiful ecosystem repeats over and over. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. And so I really make it my job, whether I'm working for a company or I'm consulting or advising one, to identify what their unique ecosystem of well-being is and ask questions like, what would it take to activate this? What would it take to bring an ecosystem to life where really it's easier to make wellness part of your DNA if you're thinking about it being a system, not just individual parts or products or programs or platforms.
As you were talking, I think about that idea of, for me, it's just, it's really, it's about, I truly, truly believe in the healing power of touch.
Yes.
And I truly believe in the work that massage therapists and estheticians do every day. They make a big difference in their community. And I really do believe that their welfare and their health and well-being and happiness is of the utmost importance. And if you take away all of the business side of it and the, you know, making a difference in profitability and all of that, it's really about, you know, figuring out ways that we can help them care for themselves in a way that sustains this beautiful career that they chose. And so
absolutely. And CG, I have to tell you, in case your listeners are not aware of this, you are one of the first people, if not the first, I remember championing the health and wellness of estheticians and spa therapists. I mean, truly being their voice, their, you know, their warrior, if you will. You were the first ones that really talked about how important it was for us to care for their well-being as a priority first. And you've been doing that for years, from your former employee to now, but even at an industry level, I think it might be one of the reasons why I absolutely fell in love with you, because you prioritize what was important. And, you know, now it's no surprise you're doing this wonderful podcast series that does the same thing, but you really do need to be applauded for being one of the first, if not the first, to bring that to the industry's attention.
Thank you, Mia. I really appreciate that. This next thing, let's shift gears a little bit, because when I read this about you and I read what you're doing in your own consulting business and how you're looking at it and how you're operating it, and what you decided to call yourself as far as a title, I was just blown away, and my heart just expanded. And I loved this idea, or what you had the bravery to do, of stepping out of that executive paradigm where we have this title and we have this expectation and we're supposed to show up this way. And if you behave outside of those models, you know, you're not long for the executive world. And, you know, I've always been a little quirky in my executive positions, and I own that, and it's who I am. But this is amazing. And you are the first chief love officer in the world. That's
Yep.
what you've titled yourself. So I want to know how you create a strategy for leading with love and what it means to be a chief love officer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for noticing. And I will say, for all the people that had the reaction you just did, there were probably the same handful that had the chin scratching of what the hell is this girl doing, naming herself a chief love officer and putting it on LinkedIn and throwing it out there. And really, it was the way I dug out of the dark hole of the pandemic, where I always had this theory, much like we did back 20 years ago, CG, when we were convinced that spa and wellness could actually pay and be productive, not only do good for mankind, but do good for business. I felt the same about love. And I went on this research quest, and I realized that it's how, you know, wellness is the what, but the how is love, that we do it with love, and that there is no shame in that. In fact, not only does it feel good and do good for business, but it actually pays. That there's evidence and science behind institutionalizing love as a business practice. And I say I like to take it from the bedroom to the boardroom, and it's a 4-letter word that makes people uncomfortable. But really, love is just the most strongest form of positivity and positivity management, and that's actually a thing. And so if you start managing to people's strengths and they just accept their weaknesses, if you start meetings by celebrating what's going good, even when the chips are down, before you speak to the challenges, if you start bringing teams together that work well together, if you start looking at your customer metrics, net promoter score, you know, all these business things that you hear about, loyalty, all of those things at their core is actually love. And so for me, it's not something that just feels good. It does good. And that's where my research led me to lots of companies out there that have in their own way institutionalized it, and they happen to be best in class or outperforming their competition or whatever. And so I kind of get deja vu because I feel like the business case that we all had to make for wellness 10, 20 years ago, I've just repeated that. I had the tools. I knew what the playing field was going to be like to do the same with love. And it's changed my life and it's changed my business for the better.
You know, and what's really interesting to me about this is that if you look over through history, and I don't mean grand history, maybe the last 40 years of history, we'll just say, and you look at the companies for the most part that have done amazingly well. Not all companies have done amazingly well are in this category, but some of the ones that have, and you look at the leaders of those companies, they always came from this place, but it wasn't defined like you've defined it. So in other words, Jim Burke, he was the CEO for Johnson & Johnson for many, many years. In fact, he was voted by Time Magazine as one of the best CEOs, the greatest CEOs of all time in the United States. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because I had talked to Dr. Tiffany Field, and she's a good dear friend of mine, and we've talked, many, many years. But Jim Burke was actually behind the initial seed money and funding for the Touch Research Institute. And I don't know if you know that or not.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, of course it would be him.
It's fascinating because he read about Dr. Field's work on premature infants. And she was just doing this, a little, research place at the University of Miami School of Medicine. And she had this vision to start a research arm of touch therapies and massage. And he read about her work and he met with her and he told her that he felt that loving touch could save the world not only from disease, but war. And so then he gave her $250,000 to start the Touch Research Institute. And so I look at someone like that and I say, they were leading with love. We just didn't have the terminology or use the same words. So while you come out and you're really defining this, I think it's going to resonate with more of the great leaders when they hear about your journey than not. And if we want to incorporate love leadership into our daily lives, what are 3 aspects that or approaches we could take? And I'm not talking that we have to be a big CEO. Maybe we're a lead therapist. Maybe we're a skincare therapist that is working with clients, and trying to lead them to make the best decisions for their skin. Maybe we're a retreat director, or a spa director. So what are 3 things that we can do to incorporate love into our leadership style?
I had 3, but I'm going to change this up for this particular one because you brought up the lead therapist. And I always think of how all the training falls onto them when it comes to bringing into a new skincare line or other things that ends up happening or a new protocol has been developed or whatever. Number 1 is you don't have to love the people that you serve, but if you love to care, the impact stands to be exponential. So I really feel like you have to love what you do, whatever that may be, to come across as authentic and have the impact that you really want. So love what you do. And if you don't love what you do, find a way to fall in love with it or change gears. So that would be like one very practical thing. A lot of times when you bring up love, people feel like you have to love you don't, but you have to love what you're doing in service of that person. So that's one. The second thing is, while you and I can talk about love comfortably and freely, some people can't. So for those that can't, I tell people it actually pays. It actually delivers business results to genuinely, demonstrate love to your colleagues, your customers, your associates, everyone that your business touches. And so that's a really important thing, that it actually delivers results, which, is motivating for certain people. The third thing is that And this is probably for people that maybe it's more for the spa directors or the unit directors. They already have ways to measure love's impact, which sounds crazy, but we already have that today. We can look at, whether or not there's repeat business, whether or not they're buying additional products after their treatments, whether or not they refer business to you or tell their friends or family to come visit. So really, we have ways to measure love already. It certainly pays to love the people that you're with and you're serving. And the third part is that you need to love what you do to make it authentic.
Thank you so much. I was going to say, I love that.
Perfect.
You have always dreamed big since I have known you. For our massage therapists and estheticians, and for all massage therapists and estheticians that are listening or watching today, share your personal philosophy on creating a big life without regret.
Really comes down to three things for me. One is, perfect segue, CG, is that you regret the things you don't do in life far more than the things you do. And so I always tell myself that when I'm afraid to do something, because I know if I don't, that's going to be the thing that I regret the most. So you regret the things you don't do far more than the things you do. The second thing is, the older I get, I am so much more concerned with being authentic with who's in the mirror, because I have to be able to sleep with her at night. And I don't want to say the right thing or the easy thing. I want to say what is going to give me the best night's sleep, that I just put it out on the field. And so my authenticity and my responsibility is to myself. That's the second thing. And that's not selfish. It's much like self-care. We have to take care of ourselves first. And then the third thing is, like it or not, we're in this business of touch and caring for people like your spa therapists and estheticians do every day. And sometimes it can feel so heavy. It can feel like we're solving world peace and feeding the hungry, because you're dealing with people, and it can feel so important. And few things are that important. And so when I start feeling that way, when I'm realizing I'm caring about something, then is probably more, is a bit impractical. I just have to take a step back. That's when I sort of have to check myself. And so that third rule is to really say, keeping perspective on what's happening in a day-to-day moment, so that I can, really be careful about how I react. So the three things: you regret the things you don't do more than the things you do. It's so important that you're authentic to the person in the mirror. And the third one is that you got to keep perspective, because it can feel more important than it is. And it's important to keep that, in tow.
Well, Mia, this has just been such a pleasure being with you today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your career story and your philosophies and your love via Zoom with us. And I hope to see you real soon in person.
I hope to see you too. Big hugs and kisses to you, CG, and thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. Back to you. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Outside the Room. I want to also give a big thanks out there to Massage Heights, who is the exclusive sponsor for this show. Listen, I'll see you next time. And from my heart to your heart, Namaste.